A 13-year-old boy is in custody, and a shelter-in-place order has been lifted in North Pickering following what police are calling a sadistic and cowardly random slaying of an elderly woman. The arrest, made without incident by the Durham Regional Police Tactical Support Unit on Thursday evening, came after a tense hours-long manhunt in the Fairport Road and Lynn Heights Drive area, just north of Finch Avenue. Officers were originally called around 3 p.m. in response to an unknown trouble call. This marks the second homicide of the year in Durham region. Durham Police Chief Peter Moreira thanked the public for their cooperation and credited the Ontario Provincial Police, Toronto Police Service, and the City of Pickering for their support during the search. I want to thank the members of our community for sheltering in place and doing exactly what we asked them to do, said Moreira. At this point here, you can go freely about your day-to-day lives. Police say the incident began with a brief interaction between the victim and the unknown male outside the residence at 2125 Lynn Heights Drive. That exchange was captured on video. The suspect then allegedly stabbed the woman multiple times before fleeing on foot eastbound on Lynn Heights Drive. The victim, who suffered what police described as traumatic injuries, was rushed to a nearby trauma center but was later pronounced dead. The motive remains unknown, and charges are still pending. Moreira did not confirm what type of weapon was used in the attack. Neighbors told reporters the neighborhood is quiet, nice, and considered high-end, with the area surrounded by vast green space. A heavy police presence remained for several hours as officers used every available resource, including the Air 1 helicopter, drones, and specialized units, to track down the suspect. As this investigation continues, residents of Pickering are left reeling from a tragedy that has shaken their sense of safety. Please like, share, and subscribe for updates on this developing story. Our thoughts are with the victim's family and everyone affected by this devastating event. Massive wildfires sweeping across western and central Canada are forcing tens of thousands to flee their homes as dire forecasts for the 2025 fire season begin to unfold. States of emergency have been declared in both Manitoba and Saskatchewan, where conditions have reached the highest level of fire risk on Environment Canada's scale. As of Thursday, over 160 wildfires are burning across the country, nearly half of them out of control, prompting the Canadian Interagency Forest Fire Centre to raise the national preparedness level to 5, the highest level, and unusually early in the season. In Manitoba, around 17,000 residents, including those from Flin Flon, Temisicamak Cree Nation, Cross Lake, and Mathias Column Cree Nation, are under evacuation orders. Premier Webb Kinyu called it one of the largest evacuations in living memory, but urged unity and resilience in the face of uncertainty. Meanwhile in Saskatchewan, Premier Scott Moe also declared a state of emergency, responding to urgent calls from First Nations leaders who raised concerns about inadequate firefighting resources. Wildfire smoke is now drifting into major American cities, raising health risks across borders. Scientists warn that climate change is fueling more frequent, intense, and unpredictable wildfires as longer, drier seasons create ideal conditions for these destructive blazes. Canada is once again at the front lines of a climate crisis that shows no signs of slowing down. Subscribe for continuing coverage as this emergency evolves. A catastrophic landslide in the Swiss Alps has buried the village of Blatten under a deluge of ice, rock, and mud after a massive chunk of the Birch Glacier collapsed on Wednesday. The collapse, described as a cascading disaster by glaciologist Bethan Davies from Newcastle University, was triggered by the weight of millions of pounds of rock debris and accelerated by unusually warm temperatures earlier in the week. The glacier's instability had been closely monitored, prompting authorities to evacuate hundreds of residents just days before the disaster. As the glacier's sidewall gave way, the river Lonza became clogged with debris, raising fears of flooding and further damage downstream. Experts believe the thawing of permafrost, the frozen ground that holds mountain rock together, was a major factor, weakening the slope and setting the stage for this unprecedented collapse. Dartmouth glaciologist Matthew Morliam noted that the permafrost acts like glue, and its melting due to rising temperatures is destabilizing entire mountain faces. Though similar events have occurred, such as in the Silvreta Alps in 2023, the Birch Glacier collapse was far worse due to the volume of ice and meltwater involved. As emergency teams assess the damage, the picturesque alpine town remains buried, a stark reminder of climate change's accelerating impact on fragile mountain environments. Subscribe and stay tuned for more updates on this developing story. Elon Musk is leaving the White House, and a court has ruled a tranche of American trade tariffs to be illegal. They are two welcome developments, but it's too soon to celebrate that the most offensive elements of Donald Trump's presidency are gone. The U.S. Commander-in-Chief has shown no signs that he is prepared to fall back into a slow and steady pace of government that benefits all and favors none. No sign either that he is willing to follow any judge's orders. Opening the White House doors to Musk, the SpaceX and Tesla chief, was only one of the first instances of Trump's enthusiasm for blurring the lines between the spheres of public service and private enterprise. And though the social media titan has admitted in an interview with tech publication Ars Technica that I probably did spend a bit too much time on politics, the giant wrecking ball he set in motion with the president's blessing will not be soon or easily stopped. Likewise, Trump's tariffs. They have roiled markets, cut the legs out from long-standing trade relationships, and transformed Washington into a near-permanent episode of Let's Make a Deal. They have resulted in a frightening and sometimes farcical state of affairs that carries the risk of recession or economic ruin for U.S.-dependent countries. That's why Wednesday's court ruling that two groups of the trade duties were illegal has received a global welcome. But with a higher court reinstating the import levies on Thursday until government lawyers can present an appeal, there is not yet a sense of complete relief. The initial decision by the U.S. Court of International Trade ruled that Trump's fentanyl and migrant tariffs against Canada, Mexico, and China violated the law because they do not deal with the threats outlined in the president's executive orders. The court also found that separate, retaliatory tariffs against a swath of nations, from Australia to India to Madagascar to Vietnam, exceed any authority granted to the president to regulate importation by means of tariffs. The court decided that this authority, under the law, falls to the U.S. Congress, not the president. Other tariffs on foreign steel, aluminum, and cars imports remained in place. The White House response was unflinching. It is not for unelected judges to decide how to properly address a national emergency, a Trump spokesperson said, adding that the president would use every lever of executive power at his disposal. That puts another wrecking ball in motion, this one on a collision course with the courts. It will probably only be decided by the Republican majority justices of the Supreme Court, who have shown some signs of willingness to put up roadblocks for an administration keen on pushing the bounds of presidential powers. But there are even doubts about Trump's willingness to follow orders from the country's highest court. The Royal Bank of Canada is making headlines this week after announcing that employees will be expected to work from the office 4 days a week starting this September. According to an internal memo seen by Reuters, the change has already stirred frustration among staff, with many voicing concerns in company-wide chat groups. The directive, issued shortly after RBC reported second quarter earnings that missed analysts' expectations, cites the need for stronger in-person collaboration. The earnings dip was largely due to an increase in loan loss provisions as the bank braces for economic uncertainty. The new in-office requirement will not apply to roles that are already fully remote or designated as full-time in-office. In a statement, an RBC spokesperson said, "RBC is a relationship-driven bank and in person, human connection is core to our winning culture. We set the expectation in 2023 that we'd come together in the office for the majority of the time, with the flexibility to work remotely 1 to 2 days a week." Still, the announcement prompted pushback internally, with employees raising questions about commuting time and transportation costs. The policy shift follows a broader trend in the financial sector. Just earlier this year, U.S. banking giant J.P. Morgan Chase required hybrid employees to return to the office full-time. RBC, Canada's largest lender, employs over 94,000 full-time staff globally as of April 30th. As the future of work continues to evolve, RBC's decision signals a firm push toward traditional office culture, and the response from employees suggests the conversation around flexibility is far from over. Please like, share, and subscribe for the latest updates in business and workplace news across Canada. A 13-year-old boy is in custody